The sound of that phone ringing wasn't just a normal call. It was the sound of years of buried anger, betrayal, and resentment coming to the surface. When David Woolley picked up the phone and dialed Kody Brown, it wasn't for a chat, and it definitely wasn't to settle things like old friends. This was about something deeper, something that had the power to ruin what little was still standing. And when Kody answered, all that confidence he usually carries, it vanished. A single sentence from David hit him like a hammer to the chest. Dead silence. Then came the chilling words that made Kody's face turn gray. This wasn't just a man-to-man conversation. This was personal. David didn't raise his voice, he didn't curse. But the tone was sharp enough to slice through any excuse Kody could have prepared. He asked one question, one that was impossible for Kody to answer without shaking the ground beneath him. Why is Robyn texting one of my cousins? And what exactly is she hiding from you? It was the kind of moment no one expects, but once it hits, there's no turning back. Kody tried brushing it off at first, putting that usual cold distance in his voice, asking what David was implying. But David wasn't implying anything, he was calling him out. And here's the thing, Kody knows David isn't someone who jumps to conclusions. He's been steady, calm. But now, even he had reached a breaking point. And when a man like David gets pushed far enough to pick up the phone and confront you, that means something's been brewing for a long time. As the words left David's mouth, Kody froze. He didn't shout, he didn't defend Robyn the way he always used to, not this time, because a part of him had already started to wonder the same thing, but he'd buried it. Robyn had been distant lately, not emotionally, no. That's not how it shows with her. It's subtle. The way she gets up to take calls in another room. The way she texts and flips her phone face down the second he walks in. The way her mood shifts every time Christine's name is mentioned. Kody had noticed those cracks, but he refused to face what they meant. Until now, when David mentioned the cousin's name, there was a pause. Kody knew it, recognized it, and that's when his tone shifted. No longer cold, no longer cocky. Now, it was something closer to fear. Because this wasn't just some random person texting Robyn. This was someone tied to Christine's world now, and that meant old fences weren't just broken. They were being used as weapons on both sides. And let's be clear, this isn't about a cheating scandal. This isn't some fantasy tabloid drama. This is about emotional betrayal, a breach of loyalty. Robyn, who had claimed for years that she was the glue in the family, now seemed to be sliding into a shadow she swore never existed. Whether it was emotional comfort, secret anger, or quiet revenge, something was happening between her and someone in David's family. And Christine, knowingly or not, might have more reason to feel vindicated than she thought. You could hear it in David's voice. He wasn't speaking out of jealousy. He was speaking out of hurt, out of protection for Christine. And when he said she deserves peace, not more games, it landed like a punch to the throat. Kody didn't respond, not with anger, not with defense. For once he had no script. That silence at the end of the call wasn't just awkward, it was telling. It was the sound of someone realizing control might finally be out of their hands. But that wasn't even the worst part. What David said next would tear open a secret that Robyn couldn't unhear. When trust breaks, it doesn't start with the blow. It starts with the cracks. Small things that seem harmless at first. A sigh after a cold glance. A door that stays shut a little too long. Words that get held back over and over until silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. That's how it started for Christine. In the last days of her life inside that family, Christine wasn't screaming. She wasn't begging. She was fading in plain sight. The light in her eyes dimmed a little each day, and no one, least of all Kody, seemed to notice. Or maybe he noticed, but he didn't care like he used to. She had stopped being the wife he pursued and started becoming the wife he tolerated. And when you're in a marriage with 4 women, tolerance isn't livable. Kody made a pattern of choosing Robyn, not just once or twice but repeatedly, in conversations, in decisions, in physical presence. And every time Christine watched him walk past her and head toward Robyn's side of the house, something inside her hardened. Still, she stayed, for the kids, for the covenant, for a promise she had made when she was too young to know it would cost her self-worth. But the damage wasn't just in what Kody did, it was in what he refused to do. He refused to fight for her. He refused to see how deeply broken she was, and when she finally stood in front of him to say, "I'm leaving," it wasn't a threat. It was mercy for both of them. She left quietly, not for revenge, not even to hurt him. She left because she had nothing left to give him. And soon after, something unexpected happened. Christine met David Woolley. It wasn't dramatic. There was no whirlwind affair, no secret build-up. Just a woman who had finally stepped out into the world, and a man who saw her, really saw her, for who she was. Not for how obedient she could be, not for how well she played the role, but for how strong and tired and beautifully honest she had become. You could see it in her eyes when she spoke about David. There was something free in her, something that hadn't lived in her for years. And for once, she wasn't surviving, she was living. That quiet joy drove Kody wild. It lit a fire of confusion and rage in him that he didn't know how to put out. He didn't understand how she could move on so fast, how she could be so at peace while he simmered in bitterness. But here's the question no one asked loud enough. Was it just Christine who felt abandoned? Because while all eyes were on Kody spiraling and Christine glowing, one woman had started to unravel, quietly. Robyn, the once cherished favorite, ended up carrying more than just the weight of Kody's affection. She carried his emotional leftovers, his bitterness, and all the expectations of being the last one standing. That's a heavy crown to wear. Especially when it was never about being first place, it was about not being the only one left. She started pulling back without making it obvious, responded slower, smiled less. Moments that seemed routine suddenly came with tension. And Kody, a man who always wanted control of everything, started to feel it. The shift, the gap growing between them. All this time, was Robyn feeling abandoned too, or plotting something else entirely? That's when the landscape started to shift again. Christine, busy with her new life, gets a message. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just one name lit up on Robyn's screen, a name that didn't belong. But Christine knew it. Not from vague rumors, this was family, this was blood. And seeing that name connected to Robyn, not by accident, but by repeated communication, brought something back to the surface that Christine thought she'd buried for good. That night, Christine didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling in silence, the phone still in her hand. The day Robyn's phone lit up with a name Christine knew too well, everything started unraveling faster than anyone could stop. She said it was just a cousin, but the way she hid her screen, that wasn't casual, it was fast, nervous, almost practiced, like someone who'd been doing it for weeks, maybe months. Robyn's fingers hovered just a second too long before she locked the phone and tucked it under a throw pillow like it was nothing. But even silence carries a sound, and Kody heard it. That click, that split-second cover-up. It didn't sit right. At first he brushed it off. He'd already been dealing with too much. Christine had left. Janelle was barely speaking to him. Mary was, at best, a faint presence. Robyn was the only one still there, the only wife who hadn't walked, at least physically. But emotionally, that was getting harder to tell. It started slow. Robyn stayed up later than usual, said she had trouble sleeping, said she was just doom-scrolling or catching up on emails. But sometimes, Kody would wake up at dawn and find her already wide-eyed, staring into her phone under the kitchen light. Too alert, too busy. And every time he asked who she was texting, he got the same flat answer. Just my cousin, nothing important. But cousins don't text until 3 a.m., especially not every night. And family chats don't usually leave people with tears tucked into the corner of their eyes. Kody noticed her emotional swings, the long pauses in conversations, the moments where she seemed far away, even when they sat across from each other. He asked if everything was okay, but Robyn always responded with that practiced face she'd worn so well over the years, the one that says I'm fine, just tired. But Kody wasn't buying it. His paranoia kicked in, something he used to accuse the other wives of, but this time he couldn't shake the feeling. There was something in the air, tense, unspoken. He tried asking again, but Robyn snapped. What do you want me to say, Kody? He's Christine's cousin, I'm trying to keep the peace. But there it was, she'd slipped. Christine never introduced her extended family to Robyn, not directly, not in a way that would have built a bond strong enough to justify hours of texting. So when Robyn spoke his name, Kody's stomach turned. Not because of the cousin, but because of the way she said it. Familiar, casual, like someone who'd said the name more times than she should. Then came the late-night pacing. Robyn walking up and down the hallway with her phone pressed tight to her chest, whispering, smiling some nights, weeping quietly others. She thought Kody was sleeping, but he wasn't. He was listening, watching. Slowly being replaced as the man in her life she was most emotionally connected to. And it broke him. All those years defending her, losing his other marriages over her, standing alone with her when the rest of the family turned on him. And now, he was scared. Scared of becoming invisible in the one relationship he thought was rock solid. What made this even messier was that the man Robyn had been texting wasn't some stranger. He was part of Christine's new world, someone who knew David. Someone who had seen Christine at her worst and had watched her rebuild. Someone who had once been close to the Brown family back before everything fell apart, but who had now drawn a line in the sand. Robyn thought no one would find out. She thought she could maintain that line between loyalty and emotional escape. But screens light up in the dark, and one night her phone lit up in front of the wrong person. Christine. She didn't go through the phone. It wasn't hers to touch. But when she passed through the room, her eyes caught a single preview message flash on the screen before Robyn locked it away. It was a name, a first name, one that made her freeze in her tracks. She hadn't thought about him in years, and yet here he was finishing his sentence on Robyn's screen. Christine learns about a connection she never saw coming right from her own side of the new family tree. They once defended this house like it was sacred, a symbol of unity, legacy, and faith, but now it feels like a prison with paper-thin walls and too many ghosts in the corners. Footsteps echo longer, and conversations turn sharp before they even leave the lips. No one's smiling in the kitchen anymore. Laughter is rare. Respect, that's been quietly bleeding out for years. The tension had hung in the living room all afternoon like a storm refusing to break, eyes darting, words strained, silence pulsing in the air like it was waiting for someone to become unhinged. And when Christine walked through that front door with the look on her face, it became clear, today was the day it all fell apart. Kody was seated, arms crossed tight, already frustrated without knowing why. Robyn, standing by the window, pretended not to feel Christine's eyes burning through her shoulder. But everybody knew, this wasn't going to be polite. Christine stood tall, calm, but her voice carried the weight of something she had been holding in for too long. "Why is Robyn messaging someone from my family?" The words exploded like glass hitting concrete. No warning, no filter. Kody straightened in his chair, his face stiff but silent. Robyn turned slowly, eyes wide, playing innocent but not convincing anyone. "What?" she said, blinking too fast. "Who said that?" Christine's breath caught before she continued. Every word came sharper than the last. "Don't play this game with me. I saw the name. I know exactly who he is. And I deserve to know why that conversation is happening behind my back." Robyn stuttered, then looked at Kody for help, but he didn't offer any this time. Instead, his voice cracked into the silence. "Wait, how long has that been going on?" And just like that, the line between Christine and Robyn vanished, and a new line split between Robyn and Kody. Her carefully built image started to buckle. "It wasn't like that," she rushed out. "He reached out first. He said he wanted to build bridges. I didn't think it would cause more drama." "Then why hide it?" Christine snapped. The air turned cold. Robyn's face twisted into a pained expression. Not guilt, something else. Fear, but not of Christine. Of what Kody might think. Of what it might mean if he believed her less than he used to. Kody stood up, his voice low but shaking. "You told me everything was fine. You told me you were withdrawing because you were exhausted. Was that a lie?" His tone wasn't angry. It was something worse. Hurt. The kind of hurt that comes when control starts slipping through your fingers. Christine watched him, watched Robyn, and for a second, something in her softened, like she saw how fragile they'd both become under the weight of this family's collapse. But sympathy only lasts so long when the truth keeps being twisted. Christine reached into her bag and slid a printed screenshot onto the counter. One text thread. No assumptions, just words, just enough. Kody leaned over it and went still. The words weren't flirty. They weren't romantic. But they were unsettling, private, familiar in a way that didn't belong between Robyn and another man, especially one tied to Christine. He didn't speak. He just looked at Robyn like she'd just taken the last rope he was holding onto and snapped it in two. "Why didn't you tell me?" he said, barely above a whisper. Robyn swallowed hard. "Because I felt trapped." And there it was. 4 words that sucked the air out of the room. Christine looked to Kody, ready to say more, maybe even explain, but he was already walking away. Fast, lost in a fog of rage, pain, disappointment. He stormed down the hallway, slamming the door behind him so hard the wall art shook. Robyn flinched, but didn't follow him. For the first time in a long time, she didn't chase after him. She turned back to someone else. David's call wasn't just about Robyn. It was about respect, about history, about the kids who had been pulled through too many of Kody's battles without ever being asked if they wanted to be part of the war. And this time, David didn't hold back. The moment Kody picked up the phone, he heard a tone he hadn't heard before, one that made it clear this wasn't about gossip or hearsay. This was about the people left in the wreckage. "You're trying to turn Leon against their own mother, Kody," David said, his voice low and steady. "And somebody has to say it. What you're doing isn't just cowardly, it's cruel." There was silence on the other end. Kody tried to clear his throat, tried to reach for that defensive voice he always used when he felt cornered. But not this time. Because deep down, he knew David wasn't bluffing, and worse, he wasn't wrong. For weeks, things between Mary and Leon had been strained, but not in the way most assumed. Leon had been rediscovering their boundaries, building distance where there used to be blind loyalty. And for the first time, Mary wasn't chasing after it. She was focused on her new relationship, someone quietly tied to the Jessup family, a detail that shouldn't have even mattered. But it did to Kody, and that's where the trouble started. He'd made little comments, half-truths, subtle digs masked as concern, all meant to poison the well slowly, hoping Leon would start to question the stability of Mary's new chapter. It wasn't open manipulation, but it wasn't innocent either, and David knew it. He saw the pattern. He'd lived long enough around it to recognize when a parent stopped acting out of love and started acting out of ego. "What exactly are you afraid of, Kody?" David asked. "That Mary might actually be happy with someone who didn't treat her like a placeholder for 20 years, Kody snapped. "You don't know what you're talking about. You think you've been here for 5 minutes and suddenly you're the expert on our family?" But David didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "No," he said. "I'm not the expert, just the one who stayed when Christine needed someone. The one who showed your daughter that love doesn't come with impossible rules. Maybe that's the real problem." That hit Kody where it hurt. Because stripped of the show, the houses, the religious structure, Kody's grip on his family has always relied on one thing: narrative. He needed to be the one telling the story, the one shaping who the villain was, who the victim was. But this new chapter, none of it was under his pen. He was a character in someone else's story now. And for the first time, he wasn't the one in control of the story, and he couldn't stand it. He hung up without a word. That night, the arguments in the house didn't stop. Robyn could hear Kody talking out loud to himself, pacing endlessly, repeating names, replaying words, his voice bouncing off the walls that used to feel like safety and now just felt like a cage. He wanted to rewrite the past 10 years in one conversation and couldn't figure out how he'd let it get away from him. But as David hung up his own phone, he wasn't feeling triumphant. Just tired, just sad, because these weren't battles he wanted. He just wanted peace for Christine, respect for the children, and for Mary to find something between the ashes that still resembled dignity. Meanwhile, whispers were growing louder. Robyn had been making calls, quiet ones, nothing official, asking about legal titles, ownership transfers, privacy requests. And although no one said it outright, questions began to form in the spaces Robyn kept so carefully guarded. Because if she was moving things quietly behind the scenes, it begged only one question. If something goes wrong, whose name is on the deeds? Outside the dusty desert, the wind carries nothing but the sound of silence. A metal trailer sits alone on Coyote Pass. One man, 4 empty chairs. Each one meant for someone who no longer wants a seat at his table. Inside, the air is still. No laughter, no footsteps, no noise from children running down the hallway like they used to. And in that stillness sits Kody, shoulders hunched, eyes vacant, looking out at everything he thought he was building. Now nothing but dirt and unanswered questions. This used to be the land of a promise. Coyote Pass was supposed to be their fresh start, their healing ground, their legacy. He had drawn up plans in his head 100 times, where each wife would live, how close their homes would be, where the kids would play. A united future. Something that would cement them as a strong family unit forever. But now, it's just a graveyard of broken plans and broken trust. Each hill he once imagined covered with homes is just another reminder of all the people who walked away. Christine was the first to leave. He saw it coming, but still, when she packed up, it tore something loose in him, not just as a husband, but as a father. And after her came Janelle. Strong, quiet Janelle, who had finally reached her limit. She didn't scream. She didn't break things. She just stood up one day and decided that being overlooked wasn't something she'd settle for anymore. Mary was next. That one hit different. Maybe because she'd been overlooked for so long it felt like she'd already left years ago, even while she lived 5 blocks away. The final straw wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was silent. And that silence is what echoes in Kody's ears every night now. The trailer shakes with the wind as he walks slowly past the tiny stove, the small sink, the cold bed that doesn't know warmth anymore. His hands run over a chair, unused, untouched. An empty mug sits on the table, almost a joke now. He keeps 4 chairs at that table, even though he only ever uses one. This was not supposed to be his story. He starts flipping through an old notebook. Notes from years ago, construction sketches, family budgets, timelines for building. His own handwriting now looks like it belongs to a stranger still full of hope. He puts it down. Time passes slowly here, or maybe it just feels that way when no one's texting back. The phone rings less these days. The kids don't visit much, some don't call at all. There are no birthdays to host anymore, no grandkids running around, no family dinners to plan for. Maybe this is the part where sympathy creeps in. And maybe that's okay, because even the ones who caused the pain can hurt too. Kody looks out the window at the empty land, and for the first time doesn't seem angry, just hollow. He smirks slightly at the idea that this was all a punishment, that maybe this was karma, but truthfully, he doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe in much right now, not in marriage, not in the dream, Not even in the land that once meant everything to him. His phone buzzes, a rare sound, one new message, it's a voice note, from Robyn. He hesitates before pressing play, hand shaking slightly as he lifts the phone to his ear. Her voice comes through soft, shaky, not rushed, but unsettled. Kody, I need to talk to you. Something's happening. I didn't want to tell you like this, but I'm scared. She doesn't say what she's scared of. She doesn't tell him what she needs him to do. She doesn't even say where she is. But the way her breath catches at the end, it's not loneliness. It's fear. She controlled the purse strings, and now she's pulling them tight. The quiet loyalty that Robyn once wrapped herself in is starting to look more like a mask. And behind it, decisions are being made, ones Kody never saw coming. Ones he never thought he had to prepare for. But that's the thing about trust built on control. It only holds until someone realizes they don't need your permission to leave. If there's one thing Robyn always understood, it was money. Not just how to spend it, but how to protect it, how to move it, how to make sure certain assets showed up under the right name at exactly the right time. Over the years, while Kody juggled 4 households, Robyn was steady. Calculating, careful, in meetings with lawyers, on signatures with banks, on deeds. Kody thought he was the one calling the shots. He thought that by building his life around Robyn, he had finally found peace. But peace is a fragile thing when it's built on obligations instead of lasting trust. And now, it turns out, the name that shows up on most of those documents isn't his. It started slowly, Robyn asking innocent questions about taxes, property lines, shared debt. Then came new legal language in their financial planning. More assets consolidated. More paperwork that didn't need Kody's signature. And he signed things anyway, because he trusted her. At least he used to. But now, the whispers are getting louder. Friends of the family, former advisors, people from inside their own circles suggesting that something strange is happening behind the scenes. That joint ownership contracts were redrawn. That trust funds were moved from shared access to protected terms Robyn had the final say on. Kody started asking questions, but every time he does, Robyn shifts the conversation. She says things like, I'm trying to simplify everything, or it's for protection, or I'm doing this for us. But who's us now, and where exactly is the money going? All this time you thought Robyn was standing by Kody. What if she was slowly walking away? Kody's trailers, the family land, parts of the retirement fund, they're all tangled in paperwork that no longer looks the way it did a year ago. And Kody, who used to know every corner of the estate, is now searching for answers in attorneys' voices that sound more loyal to Robyn than him. This is about more than bank accounts. It's about a legacy. About the reality that everything he built, all his sacrifice, or what's left of it, might be slipping out of his hands in real time. Robyn watches him crumble. And yet she stays calm, clinical. There's almost a sense that she's prepared for this moment far more thoroughly than he has. When he brings up the changes, she doesn't deny them. Not entirely. But she deflects in a way that makes it impossible to pin her down. I'm trying to keep us safe, she says. If everything falls apart, someone needs to make sure we're not left with nothing. But to Kody, it doesn't feel like security, it feels like erasure. Now the question rising louder than ever is, was this always the plan? Or is this her way of surviving what's left? And while the adults circle each other in legal fog, it's one of the kids who stumbles into something that changes everything. A drawer left open in Robyn's office, papers left unstapled, a small folder with deeds, account statements, and legal amendments, not copies, originals, names, numbers, transfer notes, and at the top, one name removed, another added. The child doesn't understand all of it right away, but they know enough. They stand in the hallway, folder in hand, frozen, looking back toward the quiet door Robyn always kept locked. And with a deep breath, they take the first step toward telling someone, not because they want to explode the truth, but because the truth was left out for a reason. You taught them to listen, to obey, to stay quiet when things got loud, and to keep the family business within the family. But now they've learned to speak. And the words coming out of their mouths aren't the ones their parents rehearsed all those years. These are raw, unfiltered. Words that carry years of pain from kids who grew up watching love decay in the corners no one swept. Gwendlyn was the first to really say it aloud. Not on a talk show or at a public event, but somewhere even louder these days, online. Her voice carried through a lens with the kind of clarity you only get after growing up under a roof built more on rules than on love. She didn't attack. She didn't go after Robyn like some expected. She spoke about the feeling of disappearing in a family that had too many plates spinning and not enough time or attention to balance any of it. She shared what it was like to watch her mother lose herself, to beg, to plead, to cry in rooms where no one would answer. And how, even after leaving, Christine still carried the weight of trying to shield her kids from the emotional wreckage. Gwendlyn didn't speak in rage, she spoke in release. Meanwhile, Leon drifted farther and farther away, not just from Mary, but from the whole dynamic. There was a sharpness in how they spoke about the past, a quiet line drawn between what used to feel like family and what now felt like history. Kody tried to reconnect, but every attempt felt a beat too late, like a man chasing an echo. Leon had stopped waiting for clarity and started building boundaries of their own. And while Mary tried once or twice to explain the gaps, even she seemed to know, some spaces don't get to be filled again. But not all the kids broke the same way. Some, especially Robyn's, stayed loyal, protective, defensive of their mother and of the only version of the family they really knew. They didn't always understand why the older siblings were so angry, or why they looked at Kody like he was a storm they had to run from. To them, he was still dad, still stable, still the one putting food on the table, even if the heart of the home was hollowed out long ago. This divide began to tear at the edges of what little was left. Birthday parties became battlegrounds of scheduling, makeups, and missing seats. Holidays were held in separate houses with separate invites. Siblings who once shared bunk beds now shared passive-aggressive text threads. Older siblings pulling away, younger ones staying silent. And those in the middle, tired of picking sides when all they wanted was peace. Pain doesn't fade gently when you grow up in a world centered around rules, obedience, and sacrifice. Some carry the weight quietly, others pass it on, but eventually the silence cracks, and it cracked one evening when someone, anonymous at first, posted a screenshot, then another, an email chain, Kody's name, Robyn's name, private conversations. At first, no one believed it, but the tone, the phrasing, it was familiar to anyone who had grown up in that house. The way Kody reasoned his choices, the way Robyn framed her intentions as just trying to hold the family together. It all read like a script they knew too well. The emails showed decisions being made about money, visitation, and communication with adult children, without those same children being told, without even being asked. Christine saw the screenshots, so did Janelle. So did half the internet within minutes. And when the original poster was finally traced back, it wasn't someone angry or spiteful. It was one of the kids, not to destroy the family, but to make one thing clear, they were done staying quiet. She was the last wife standing. The one who said she never wanted to be the favorite. The one who cried on reunion couches, swearing she only ever wanted the sisterhood to work, the family to hold. And for a long time she did stand. While Christine left, while Janelle walked away, while Mary was quietly pushed to the fringes, Robyn stayed. But now, the way she speaks carries the weight of someone who's finally starting to come undone. It wasn't a big fight. There was no shouting, no public drama, no one stormed out. It started with quiet sentences spoken in past tense. Kody and I used to talk about building here. I thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives with all of them. I tried so hard. Those phrases didn't belong to a woman who was fighting anymore. They sounded like someone who had already grieved what most people still believed was alive. In a rare moment of quiet, Robyn sat across from one of her older kids, not her usual composed self. She looked tired. Makeup less polished, voice softer, the kind of softness that doesn't ask for pity, just space to finally let go of the performance. I thought if I gave everything, all of me, maybe it would hold, she said, eyes not meeting theirs. But loving someone doesn't mean you'll be loved like that in return. She wasn't just talking about the family, she was talking about him, all the sacrifice, all the loyalty, the endless defenses. The nights spent reassuring him while the world called him out. And what had she gotten back? The weight of the entire family collapse dropped squarely on her shoulders like it was hers to carry alone. But she wasn't angry. Not right now. The sadness in her voice betrayed something much deeper, exhaustion. A kind of heartbreak that doesn't break like glass, more like slow erosion. Cracks forming, spreading, weathered by years of rejection, favoritism turned resentment, and the walls that once guarded her home now closing in. To the public, Robyn has often been portrayed as manipulative, calculating, the one who won the man while everyone else walked out. But winning doesn't look like this. She's not smiling. She's not triumphant. She's lost, maybe for the first time, truly lost. And then there's the memory. The moment the youngest asked, "Why isn't anyone coming over for holidays anymore?" She didn't have an answer, just tears. And the quiet dread of finally realizing, the family isn't coming back. Kody, isolated and restless up on Coyote Pass, has become unreachable even to her. Paranoia eats at him. Possessiveness, anger. He no longer leans in with love the way he once did. Every conversation turns into a cleansing of his own guilt, not a space for healing hers. For years, Robyn stood by him, even when it cost her relationships with the other wives, their children, and even her stability. But support without reciprocity grows cold. Trust without comfort feels hollow. And now she stands in the kitchen, staring at her phone, breathing heavy, thumb hovering above a name in her contact list. Not the one she used to dial 10 times a day. She scrolls past Kody, past old threads with Christine. She gets to one name, hesitates, presses call. It rings once, then twice, and then it answers. She doesn't say hello right away. She exhales slowly, silently. Then, in a tone that breaks even the silence itself, "I don't know what to do anymore. I'm tired. I can't hold him up by myself." It's not Kody she called, it's someone else. All empires fall. But some burn slower than others. Not with fire and fury, but with silence. The kind that creeps in during quiet dinners, empty holidays, and unanswered texts. The Brown family empire didn't collapse overnight. It crumbled little by little, unnoticed by many and denied by the one who needed the control the most. And now, there's no mistaking it. The kingdom is gone. Kody wakes up most mornings to stillness. The kind of stillness that used to mean peace but now feels like punishment. He's alone, not entirely by choice, but because nobody stayed to hold space for him anymore. The land he once saw as sacred is now a stretch of dust and regret. His trailer on Coyote Pass echoes more than it warms, and even Robyn, his once last ally, has grown eerily quiet. Her calls are fewer. Her response is colder. There are no more building plans pinned on the wall. No more drafts of shared homes. No communal calendar trying to make 5 lives dance in rhythm. He looks out at the soil and doesn't see hope anymore. He sees everything he lost. Christine, on the other hand, walks with ease now. She laughs loudly and often, not because every day is perfect, but because she no longer has to dim her light to survive. She chose freedom over loyalty to dysfunction, and in doing so, taught her children what boundaries truly look like. She gave herself permission to be loved in a way she had never been before. David stands by her, not over her, not in front of her, but beside her. And that's a language she had never fully known until now. Janelle's path hasn't been easy either. She's rebuilding slowly, with integrity and space for herself for the first time in decades. She chose independence, chose her own peace over pretending. There are hard days, no doubt, but she's no longer begging anyone to make room for her in a system that never cared if she fit. She's not trapped by the history books written by someone else's hand. Mary's story is quieter, but silence doesn't mean absence. Behind closed doors, she's been writing her own ending, or maybe a new beginning. The relationship once defined solely by heartbreak and rejection now takes on new meaning. She doesn't need to prove her worth anymore. She's finding it slowly, piece by piece, as she learns what love doesn't feel like. And then there's Robyn, once positioned as the favored one, now moving through her own emotional wilderness. The woman who once fought so hard to hold the family together is now uncertain where she belongs. Her voice, once pleading for connection, now sounds almost like mourning. She stayed the longest, but now even she is wondering what staying really meant. Was it loyalty? Or fear? Was it love? Or guilt? What's left isn't a family, it's fragments. Pain scattered across too many years, too many broken rules, too many quiet betrayals. And yet, there's something sobering in the honesty of what remains. No more pretending. No more schedules, just people. Wounded, yes, but real for once. Free of the illusion. The children carry the scars, they've spoken their truths. Some choose closeness, some choose distance, but at least now the choice belongs to them, not the system. Kody still stares out toward the hills as if something might still rise from the ashes. But perhaps this ending wasn't a fire to be survived. Maybe it was a truth waiting to be faced. The dream died. Not through betrayal overnight, but through years of neglect dressed up as devotion. So now we ask the questions, was this fate? Was this karma? Or was this always coming? What do you think? Did they each get what they deserved? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. I'm reading each and every one.